Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. My name is Bertha Tobias and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion right here from the COVID-19 Communication Center. We are joined by a sign language interpreter, Nanda Shipahu, as we effectively unpack today's discussion, which is an important understanding of the role of ICT, information and communications technology, during COVID-19. To that effect, we are joined by our panelists, Ms. Linda Aipinge, who is the Director for Information and Communication Technology Development in the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology. We are also joined by Mr. Laban Hiwilepo, who is the Acting Chief Executive Officer for Telecom Namibia. Now, unfortunately, we do not have our health update at this stage. It will be delivered to the nation on NBC Namibia's news platform at 1 o'clock. But for now, we do have a briefing on cabinet decisions from our Honorable Minister of Information and Communications Technology, Dr. Pea Mushelenga.
Good morning, viewers and listeners. I'm here to present to you the decisions that were taken by the Cabinet decision-making meeting, the 9th meeting that was held on Tuesday. Decision on the approval for the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology to develop a national digital strategy for Namibia. Cabinet took note of the content of the concept note of the digital strategy and approved the development of the national digital strategy for Namibia. I'm told interpreters cannot follow. I want to repeat. Cabinet took note of the content of the concept note of the digital strategy and approved the development of the national digital strategy for Namibia. Cabinet further directed the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology to develop the national digital strategy for Namibia in consultation with the National Planning Commission. Decision on the annual report of the Bank of Namibia. Cabinet took note of the annual report of the Bank of Namibia and authorized the Minister of Finance to table the report in the National Assembly. Decision on the request for approval of the Small Claims Court Bill. Cabinet approved in principle the Small Claims Court Bill and referred the bill to the Cabinet Committee on Legislation, CCL, for scrutiny before its tabling in the National Assembly. Thank you.
Right. Thank you to our Honorable Minister for that briefing. Now we're going to get right into our discussion, right? And Ms. Aipinge, we'll start with you just to establish a general premise for our conversation. As a government ministry, what has your ministry done in relation to mitigating and or navigating this pandemic within the context of ICT?
Yes, good morning, viewers, and thank you so much for having me this morning. You would note that during the start of the pandemic, social media particularly was flooded with fake news. And this really caused confusion and also panic among the citizens. What the ministry has done, or as government has done, is to actually to establish this center to serve as a credible source of credible information to disseminate to the public. So that is basically one of the best strategies that government has introduced. I must as well highlight that this pandemic actually came to make us realize the importance of ICT and relevance of ICT in service delivery, because we have seen that during the new normal, working from home or e-learning, we depended so much on the use of ICT. So this brings us to really intensifying our efforts to make sure that we implement the national broadband policy in the country to ensure that everybody in the country receives the service that they deserve. Thank you.
Right. And as we're talking about actions taken to improve this, Mr. Hiwilepo, could you talk to us about how Telecom specifically has worked with other stakeholders to situate themselves in a position that is best able to continue delivering services and information seamlessly to Namibians?
Thank you, moderator, and good morning, viewers. And also thank you for the opportunity to be part of the panel to give this update. As we have observed right from the time when the state of emergency was activated and a couple of measures came into that led to the lockdown, Telecom Namibia, being a government company, we understand very well the importance of communication and the role it plays in this time of stress and emergency. So we came to the party to, first of all, to support the government in making sure that the mechanism and the control center, for example, this one, and other places established for the purpose of quarantine are well connected, and they have a functioning communication infrastructure and network and services. To that effect, we also play the role to make sure that the regulator communicates to all communication service providers to make sure that toll-free numbers are open on all the networks and are free. We also had to come to the party to sponsor connectivity in the form of internet access at a couple of places, including the quarantine centers. And we have very quickly understood the pressure placed on the network due to the new normal, whereby companies are doing business from home, loved ones are keeping in touch with their loved ones, their families and relatives through a means of communication, and also the e-learning, which was mentioned by Ms. Haipinge here, that we had to come to the party and meet in a quick way those demands in the best possible way.
Right. And when we talk about collaborating, and we understand that all ICT institutions and just institutions in general need to play their role in making sure that we collectively fight this virus. So to that effect, Ms. Aipinge, could you tell us if there's been any regulations or proactive policies responsive to COVID-19 that have been instituted to regulate institutions of ICT? And how those are working?
Yes, I must mention that there were no immediate policies introduced, but already we have had in the pipeline, as I've mentioned, to say, in terms of the new normal, there's so much demand for broadband. So what that means is that we, as a Ministry of ICT, earlier this year, we have launched the National Broadband Policy. And this sets the standard in terms of your minimum download speed that you can expect from the service provider. So this is basically, there is a national steering committee that has been established that steers the implementation of this of the policy. I must also highlight that the last year, the Electronic Transactions Act has been gazetted. It has become operational. And we understand that the new normal requires to do things differently. Online transaction actually has taken up, it's actually a new normal that people transact online. So what happens is that with the gazetting or the operationalization of the Electronic Transactions Act, it provides for legal recognition of electronic transaction and also the consumer protection in the e-commerce ecosystem. So that is really how far we have gone with regards to the policies and laws that we have in place.
And Mr. Hiwilepo, is there anything you'd like to add to that on the note of regulations for upholding standards for ICT institutions?
Yes, I can contribute to say that what Masai Pingi is saying, we are part of that exercise. We have representation at national level. We have also taken steps to really come up with revised offerings that are aimed primarily at the education sector. Because we are now in an era where it's not only enough to connect schools, it's now a demand to connect houses where the learners and the students are living and where the teachers are living. And that presented a large scale of demand, which we were not prepared to meet in the short term. So it will definitely require collaboration and a rethink of how to use the investment in that sector to accelerate the connectivity of all the citizens at the end of the day. So we have also approached the regulator to allow us to make use of some of the spectrum in a quick way that will allow us to enable connectivity capacity that is required in various places. So those are some of the short-term activity that we have taken that are aligned to the regulation development that took place recently.
Now, Mr. Hiwilepo, you mentioned a large scale of demand, which leads me to ask the question. We understand that globally, ICT services specifically have been in demand, whether that's to sell products, conduct meetings, or launch businesses. But we also understand that on the flip side of that, institutions such as your own do face challenges in and of themselves. Could you talk to us about those specific technical, operational, general challenges that you face and how you're going about mitigating those? Ms. Ipinge, we can start with you.
Yes, I must highlight that for us as a ministry, our role is to facilitate ICT development and also to make sure that we have responsive laws and policies that are in place. So I think the challenge is that technology moves at a very fast pace. The challenge is really keeping up with the evolving technology. But what we have done to address that, really, we have started with reviewing, for example, the Communications Act, which is for 2019, just to make sure that we accommodate the emerging trends from the sector. Also, we are reviewing the national ICT policy. We have various policies. We have a telecommunication policy, broadcasting policy, the postal policies. These have become obsolete in these times. So we are working actually to ensure that we review and incorporate the emerging trends. The Honorable Minister, in his the address, he mentioned about the National Digital Strategy, which the ministry is authorized now to develop. We did a concept note where we highlighted where we are as a country in terms of our readiness for digital transformation. And certain issues have been raised. But then what we're trying to do then is to come up with a roadmap. The next step from here is basically for us to do a readiness assessment for all the institutions, because it's a national policy or national strategy. We do a readiness assessment that would help us come up with clear strategic objectives and clear targets for the country.
And Mr. Hiwilepo, could you talk to us about the challenges that telecom is facing specifically and how you're going about dealing with those?
Yeah, first of all, let me point out that when the state of emergency was activated, telecommunication service provider or telecommunication services was classified as an essential service. And to provide critical services in time of constraint, whereby we first of all have to ensure the safety of our staff and also the safety of the consumers or the customers that we engage out there. Our primary focus was obviously first to make sure that the network and the services are available and performing to the best setup as possible. And with that, we had to institute measures to make sure that our people are working remotely, teleworking from home as far as possible. Some activities we are up to now still doing on that remote basis to monitor the network, to monitor the end-to-end services. We also went to the extent for big corporate customers, whereby we are the sole provider for the end-to-end network, where we can allow them also to do some monitoring of their network on their own. And that is an opportunity that we will expand more as we go forward. So the other challenge we faced was to do with logistics and supply chains. We have experienced constraints and delays due to the lockdown, which is actually affecting not only Namibia, but all the country, including those where we source some of our items that we need to maintain and expand our network. So we had to deal with those, and in some cases, we had to do as much as possible with what we have. So going forward, really, some of the stuff we have now integrated into our day-to-day operation is no more just to cope with the current emergency. So we have to rely strongly on the use of online type of interfaces, and linked to that is the security. For example, we experience a huge demand for VPN to allow and enable businesses to work from home and remotely, but that has to be done in a responsible manner, taking into account the need to ensure that the security end-to-end is ensured. And those are some of the measures that we have put in place to deal with the challenges that we face.
Right. So as we talk about the challenges, it is important to recognize then that on the flip side of institutions such as your own trying to mitigate those harms, there's also the problem of integrating and or introducing a reliance or an increased usage of ICT services to the public with a consideration of a context that is Namibia. So Ms. Aipinge, then could you talk to us about some of your strategic objectives as a ministry in terms of creating a meaningful meeting point between your ministry, which is ICT services, and Namibia?
I would specifically for this subject matter, I would be referring more to the national broadband policy. And the national broadband policy advocates for universal access to broadband. So this is what we are advocating. And also to ensure that there's a regulatory framework in place for the deployment of broadband. But I must highlight that in terms of this policy, we have various targets. And the overall target is really that by 2025, 95% of the population will be covered by broadband. And what I can highlight or maybe elaborate better is that for any operator that is in the market or upcoming, whenever they roll out the infrastructure, you deploy your infrastructure. What actually it means is that we want to start off from 3G. Because from 3G, you're able to do anything. You look at the students now, the online learning, wherever you are, you should be able to download and upload. So that is basically our target. We have also targets in terms of educational institutions and health facility. We have seen really it was a wake-up call during this pandemic, especially for the health sector, because we can also focus on e-health and all that, e-medicine, that can really take place in the country. So our focus is really on that broadband. But I must also highlight that with being online comes with challenges. Mr. Hiwilepo mentioned the issue of the security, end-to-end security. But at a national level, we're also concerned about the security, cybersecurity, because then the more you're online, the more vulnerable you become. So what we are advocating for or trying to achieve is to make sure that we accelerate the finalization of a cybercrime bill to really create offenses for the cybercrimes that are taking place online. And also the issue of data protection. We are also focusing on making sure that you're online and your data is also protected. So that is basically in terms of what we are trying to do. But I also highlight is that what we need to do while being online, everybody of us need to be a responsible citizen. We have to practice what is called cyber hygiene, by knowing what to do, what sites you click on, what you don't click on while you're online. So to that end also, the ministry is actually at the advanced stages of developing what you call a national cybersecurity strategy and a national cybersecurity creation awareness plan to make sure that we communicate this message to everybody, to say it starts with you. We might not have a law. Yes, it becomes a challenge with regards to prosecution, but we're saying be responsible citizens when you are online. And we have seen cases, for example, of children that just because you don't want your child to disturb you, because you're doing something or you are busy online or working, you give your child a phone. And this child is, on YouTube or is viewing any other content. So it starts with really all of us that let's also work together to ensure that we are all safe while online with this new normal.
Right. And Mr. Hiwilepo, is there anything you'd like to add on to that, just in terms of synthesizing ICT service provision with the public, considering, generally low literacy levels of ICT, and specifically in rural areas in the country?
Yes, certainly. You see, one of the things that nearly all the service providers are doing is to provide a footprint of a network that will enable people to connect. But to connect, you obviously need the right devices, and you need the right content to be as close as possible, ideally in country. Now, if one look at the pressure and the higher demand of connectivity services and the higher demand of online, to do things online for businesses and schools and nearly all spheres of our daily activities, one see also an opportunity. And the opportunities for us as a service provider, it opened up a door to find partners and collaborate. We are not intending to do everything on our own, and we are actually looking for those type of smart partnership to actually add solutions, relevant solutions to the connectivity aspect that we are actually producing, if you consider us as a factory. We need to add the aspect of connectivity and content and bundle this together with solutions that meet the end-to-end of the specific sector. And on top of that, we need to find ways how to bridge the gap of educating the public, making it easy, making it simple, so that everybody is able to benefit quickly.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, our call lines are officially open for any comments, contributions, or questions. The number to dial is 061-400-397. I'll say that again, 061-400-397 is the number to call to comment, ask questions, and contribute. In the meantime, Mr. Hiwilepo, you mentioned strategic partnerships, collaboration, and you also mentioned finding ways to work together. Could you just expand on that a little bit? Not too specific necessarily, but just could you expand on that and tell us about the strategic partnerships that you're currently working on as Telecom to ensure that there's a successful return to the normal?
For example, let me start with education sector, which is very, very important, because it could mean we will have a population that is not well educated. So connectivity is one aspect, but that will require some approach, because it will require a lot of funding if you have to connect, say, 100,000 houses to reach out to, say, 500,000 students and teachers. In the short term, that would demand a huge investment. Now, to make sure that the investment, the funding that is available collectively among all the operators, one would want to see a structured approach whereby we tackle this in a coordinated manner that we don't duplicate. And on the other hand, in terms of partnership now out there, if you look at the education sector, connectivity is one aspect, but you actually need online type of classroom environment. And this could be done at best by an entrepreneur out there and partner with us. So those are some of the aspects that we are looking at, for example. I know, for example, Google, as a global company, has also recently made online classroom available at no charges. But some customization in some aspect to bridge the gap of understanding and the reality that is really on the ground, to ensure that things are practically meeting the needs and the challenge we face in the country, we might require some customization, and those are well understood by the people from this country. So we are quite open to those type of collaboration, and also in the financial sectors. It's really developing application solutions that will meet a specific need end-to-end, which will make it easy for the end user out there, which will make it convenient, and we are open to collaborate with such entrepreneurs, if I may put it that way.
Right. Now, before we continue, we do have a question from the floor.
Yes, good day. My name is Enon Bango, and I was a former telecom employee and the founder of Untitled Youth Development. My question to the panel is basically, it's really good to see that the Ministry of ICT is in collaboration with its stakeholder, Parastatal. My question is rather on a practical level, because I was involved in practical awareness creations. What is telecom doing when it comes to mitigating practical awareness campaigns that are directly informing, say, for example, the public servants on how to use the appropriate licensing for the online softwares?
Right, Mr. Hilip, I believe that's a question for you.
Yes, let me just, the question is about what are we doing to increase the awareness on the public sector to use the ICT services. Did I get it correctly?
Yes, because I've been listening to the dialogue, and I've noted that there's a lot of communication or reference made to online use of technology during the COVID. So my question is basically linked to what is the understanding of these users or the end users?
Okay. Now, let me break it down to say public sector, one leg is the government, and the other leg is all of us out there. Now, with regard to the government, as a telecom being a government company, some years back, we have been tasked to develop together with the government a national backbone network for the government. We have done that, and we have set up at every regional office a hub that is actually an aggregation point for connectivity for the government in that specific region, which will make it easy to communicate in a close network, meeting all the security requirements for the government. Now, we have taken a step forward to review that setup to find opportunity for optimization, and we are working very closely with the government. Essentially, it's more or less elevating the government to the stage where it becomes its own service provider. Yes. And there are opportunity and benefit to approach it in that way. So we are actively discussing and engaging the government on that aspect. We have made progress in terms of review. Those reviews are done of the network. It's really now to get to the level of the services to say how it will be done. Once that is finalized, the government will take some leading role in communicating to the entire government so that we can find cost-effective way to connect all government entities and institutions and offices to that network. Telecom and government have made a lot of investment, almost 100 million to establish that network. Now, to the public out there, we are really in a mode of open mind and to review what we are doing on an ongoing basis. But our public relation and marketing leg of the company has a number of initiatives and platform to engage the public, whereby we are also receiving input and comment on what we need to improve. And it's really an evolvement, and we have gone in a mode of evolving faster and improving faster on that aspect.
Yeah. Yes, very well, thank you.
Right.
The second point was the licensing part. How does the public servants, or say those that need to use, for example, TeamViewer, how do we basically make the end users understand how to get such a license for communication, whether it's now at the public level sector or is there no licensing of software for online purposes?
Oh, licensing of software.
Yes, for public servants, that is now the government officers, such as the Ministry of ICT, or just an individual who is at home, who is allowed to use the correct software that will not allow any viruses and so forth.
That one, you are giving me an idea to say probably we will need to open up a line of advisory in that aspect. Because as you know, for example, there are, Microsoft offer now various packages for home use and for businesses. And some of those aspects, because we also have cloud offering, and cloud offering allow us to scale, to buy on a large scale and achieve some discount and offer it to the general public. So there are opportunities in that space because we actually have a partner in place and a ready to deliver type of product developed already in that space. So I will take some notes on this one so that we can see how we improve our line of advisory in that aspect.
Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you for that question. Now, Ms. Apinge, I must ask as well, because that's a very interesting and important question, which is, what is MICT doing, for example, in terms of raising awareness about using different ICT services?
Yes, I must say that because of the capacity that we actually have in a ministry, we really haven't done much. But what we are planning to do then is with also the awareness creation plan that I talked about, is that we really want to intensify and bring the partners on board. We're working with the Commonwealth Secretariat, for example. They have availed themselves to help government in creating awareness in all the aspects of ICT. So this is actually the focus that we are intending to go as a ministry.
All right. And on that note, Mr. Hiwilepo mentioned engaging the government. Could you talk to us a little bit about that engagement?
Well, I would start off with what Mr. Hiwilepo is referring to. When the new normal now came to play, was we have, as a ministry, facilitated discussions with the ministries of higher education, specifically for education sector. The two ministries, Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education, the Council of Higher Education, and also the telecommunication operators. We had discussions and we said we are faced with this challenge that the learners and students have to be online. We sat on the table and say, what is that you can offer? Can you give us options in terms of what your various companies can offer? So the ministries, or the two ministries, could really make an informed decision based on the needs and also the budget. So that really, I can say that really has helped the Ministry the two ministries of education to get the solutions that they want to mitigate this. I must also mention that, when you work from home, for example, what we have noted was there was so much congestion on the network, and there were so many complaints. And the reason being that you need more spectrum or frequency. What we have done in this regard, we have also had engagements with the regulator, which is Communication Regulatory Authority of Namibia. And then we said, for us to help the operators is to make sure that you re-engineer your processes, especially when they apply for a license or for spectrum, to be able to deal with the demand on bandwidth. So these are basically some of the collaborations and the role that we have played to ensure that there is smooth operation for the country.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder that our call lines are open for any comments, questions, or contributions. We are talking about the role of ICT in Namibia during COVID-19, and the number to call to contribute is 061 400 397, 061 400 397. In the meantime, as we approach the end of our discussion, a major and important question is, what are some of the key lessons that we've learned during this time in relation to information and communication technology, and how are we using those lessons to inform future visions for the way ICT services look in Namibia? And we'll start with you, Ms. Aipinge.
I think what we have learned is really the need for collaboration. For example, Namibia has very good ICT infrastructure. The good lesson here is that we need to maximize on what we have. Especially with the Communications Act provides for infrastructure sharing, the regulator makes regulations, so we really need to make sure that the operators optimally take up this opportunity, and it must be in a more transparent and a fair manner. Instead of you having towers standing to one another, we are advocating that at least share and lease from the other, or you make arrangements to say, if I put up this tower here, Telecom put up this tower here, the other company put up the towers here, and then you see how you really can compensate one another. So that is really what we're thinking that should be done. So the other issue, the lesson is the budget. I've mentioned earlier to say COVID has come to really emphasize the need for ICT, because people felt or thought that ICT is just all about when you have a phone, and that's basically it. But it's more than to that, because your phone can become your office. So, but then what really needs to be done, we need more investment and the financial injection in the ICT sector. We have actually observed that, Telecom, for example, mentioned that they need to expand their networks. And also the issue now, when you talk about your broadband connectivity, again, I come back to broadband, is that you need investment for you to upgrade your sites from, for example, 2G to 3G to be able to meet that. So we really need collaboration and partnership. There shouldn't be competition, but rather that the focus that we are working in unison for the benefit of the country.
Now, we do have a caller on the line. We have Tinashe from Onanjokwe. Good morning and welcome.
All right. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'd like just to divert slightly from the topic of ICT. Thank you so much, the Minister of Information and Technology. But I just wanted to give an opinion with regards to COVID-19 infection as a country. I don't know, have our technocrats considered for the country to go for herd immunity? For all of us maybe, COVID is not going anywhere. Where in that era, it happened with HIV. The moment when people heard about HIV, people, the first, I'll tell you, experience of some other guys who were in the laboratory, they ran away when they were told that there's a specimen which has got HIV positive. But right now, the specimens are being processed daily, routine, and even rapid tests are being performed inside rooms in hospitals, right? So with COVID is not going anywhere. It's here to stay with us. Are we going to stay as a country in these lockdown phases until when? Can't we consider the option of going for herd immunity? As we have seen, we are not being hard hit. And one good thing which we have to think our country has got one very efficient health system, which will be able to cater, as we have seen with severe cases of corona. And should we move away from the winter time, getting into summer, I think it would be more likely good for us to consider the option of herd immunity. We open the country, those who get the infection, they recover, rather than to stay in this mode where the economy is crumbling. We are having all these measures being put in place, but as we have heard, like just yesterday, who declared that COVID-19 is airborne. It's not only droplet infection. So how are we going to end something which is airborne?
Right. Thank you, Tinashe. Thank you for that. Much. Thank you for that comment, question, contribution. Now, I believe Tinashe's sentiment speaks to rapid testing. Although that is not necessarily a question for our panelists here today, perhaps we can talk about the role of ICT in delivering, not necessarily testing, but information regarding testing results.
Yeah, if I may contribute. I mean, we have seen solutions adopted in a number of countries that are application-based, both to trace movement so that you are able to correlate linkage if in the event and who came in contact with who in the event somebody is tested positive. It will allow faster analysis if application-based is used. Now, Namibia doesn't necessarily have to design its own. It's a matter of finding one which works well and adopt it for our own use here. We can play a role in facilitating some of those aspects. Now, I think maybe that's the most relevant comment I can make to build on the contribution made by the caller.
Now, before we had Tinashe on the line, Ms. Apinge was talking about the crucial lessons that they've learned as a ministry and going forward. Mr. Hiulepo, could you talk to us about the crucial lessons that telecom has learned and how you're going to use those to inform visions in the future?
Yeah, one of the lessons we have learned is that, or is really to accept that coronavirus is here and we don't know for how long it will stay with us, in terms of finding a cure and a way to treat it. So that is really our planning going forward takes that into account. We cannot ignore that. That is a reality, we will live with it. The other thing is really that Namibia has to move towards some form of self-reliance in terms of developing and hosting content that are needed for the functioning of certain sectors, including education. And as I said earlier, that is a space where service providers don't necessarily need to do it on their own. There's room for collaboration and partnership. The other reality is that we need to embrace new technologies that will allow us to provide and meet the connectivity demands that we are facing and also going forward. This means accelerated rollout of fiber, and we need to embrace and introduce very quickly and soon technology like more widespread like LTE Advanced and also 5G. So those are technologies that will help us to scale and cope and be able to respond to the connectivity demand that is there. We have also learned, because some places in Namibia are very remote, and to that extent, the widespread usage of satellite communication will become more relevant going forward. And Telecom Namibia, for example, has recently just upgraded our satellite hub, which means we can now connect more users to our satellite infrastructure. Technically, you can be anywhere in Namibia. We will be able to connect you, even though there is no fiber. I also want to mention something which Ms. Ipinga has mentioned, which is that Namibia, and especially Telecom Namibia, has a very good backbone network. This means from border to border and connecting nearly every town and every passing through a town and every village almost in the country on the main artery of main roads and connectivity. And what is missing, and this is what will require huge investment, and this is a reality that we have come to accept, is that the connectivity towards the end users that is scalable, that will meet the connectivity demands, will require investment. And that is a space, especially when it comes to the education sector and the non-profit type of setup, will require some special intervention also maybe from the government side.
Now we do have a caller on the line. We have Joseph from Rundu. Joseph, good morning and welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yes,
Please
I
go
just
ahead.
want to ask, what else for you are making, for example, those people, they don't have, how gonna possible they make their life easy?
Sorry, Joseph, could you please repeat that question?
How possible is that for those people who don't have, how gonna their life make easy? Hello?
Joseph, sorry, please repeat that.
I can just say, how possible is those people gonna make, how possible is those people, if they don't have those, the telecom and mobile, how possible they will make their life easier?
Right. Oh, I believe the question speaks to how do we make life easier for people who don't have access to ICT services. Ms. Ipinga, perhaps you can try to engage this one.
Yes, the role of the Ministry of ICT, like I indicated, is actually just to create an enabling environment. And then you have a regulator in place that should regulate the ICT sector. And then you have the operators and the vendors that would actually bring these services to the people. But as we speak at the moment, as with our budget as a Ministry of ICT, we really do not have the budget to make sure that, for example, the less fortunate, for example, would be afforded with maybe cheaper devices. That unfortunately we don't, but we are really advocating that whoever brings the product on the market, which meets the requirement, should really be able to bring it at a fair and reasonable price. So that is really how far we can go.
Thank you. Now, unfortunately, we are nearing the end of our conversation, but there is a very important question that I'd like to ask that is against the backdrop of something that Mr. Huilepo has mentioned, and that is, it speaks to the necessity to create technologies that work for us. And Ms. Ipinga, I'm interested to hear, what do you think is the role currently of Namibian people in contributing to the development of those technologies, given the practical limitations that we're facing because of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think I think innovation plays a very important role, and like what Mr. Huilepo indicated, is that we have so many solutions that are available. So what actually happens that in this case is that we really need to, as all of us in the ecosystem, either is the research technology, the commission, or the Ministry of Higher Education and Innovation, to really collaborate and create an enabling environment for these the innovators, for example. I think the challenge that we have at the moment is that we have so many local products, and I would refer to one of the former ministers who would actually say, we don't have the appetite as a country, but I think we really need to work towards ensuring that we encourage innovation. So much is going on into universities, in these laboratories, so we really need to make sure that we encourage the uptake of these applications.
Right, thank you. Now, is there anything else that we'd like to add, just final remarks before we officially close off our discussion? Mr. Hiwilepo, anything to conclude?
Yeah, maybe I'll just conclude with a comment on the last question you have asked. Really, that we need to start. We even though there is COVID outbreak, there is constraints. We have our academic institution. We have a lot of brilliant minds active at those institutions. We need to start. We need to find ways how to give them interesting problems that meet practical needs and solve practical problems on the ground. And that will require us also to play a role. And to that effect, we have actually already started engaging the university in that aspect.
Right. And Ms. Ipinge, is there anything that you'd like to say finally to conclude?
Yes, I would like to thank you for hosting us this morning and creating this opportunity for us to talk about the role of ICT during these trying times. I really would like just to indicate that as a government or as a ministry, we are committed to continue creating an enabling environment. But what is really important is collaboration and partnership for us to make this a reality. So, and also the investment in ICT, I really would like the focus to really be on ICT, to like the young innovators, to make sure that we have funding to fund the young innovators to solve the problems that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our discussion today. We were focusing on the role of information and communication technology in Namibia during COVID-19. We were joined by our panelists, Ms. Linda Ipinge, who is the Director for Information and Communication Technology Development in the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology. And we were also joined by Mr. Laban Hiwilepo, who is the Acting Chief Executive Officer for Telecom Namibia. Our sign language interpreter for today was Nanda Shipahu. From me, your moderator, Bertha Tobias, it's have a good day and thank you for watching.